on the move. Little dance step was good. Couple of bounces. Can take it himself and launch long. Inspirational.
Time ticking away. Stop it. For Silvani. What about that?
Mackay. Two in a minute. And they are dancing now, the Blues.
Almost Mackay. Walsh, here he is. Straightens up and has delivered. Is there nothing this young man can't do?
Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian and Lockie is away enjoying some time in Europe at the moment. And look, I didn't want to ruin his holiday, bring him in to talk about this horrendous loss to Richmond. So I also couldn't do this by myself. So I've had to bring in one of the best footy minds out there to help me review this game. You'll know him as the voice of the VFL. He's also none other than the jumper punch and blue abroad zone, Paul Sebastiani. Yeah. Welcome, mate. How you going?
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, mate. I feel flattered. I'm happy to be in the navy blue corner, mate. It's my debut. Hopefully I can have 3 votes on this one, eh?
Oh, hopefully. And look, well, I'm punishing you, bringing you into this, so I had to pump you up to start this thing. But I guess, look, Carlton, we've gone down by 15 points to Richmond. Yeah. We'll get into the specifics throughout the episode, but I guess from a real broad sense, where was that game lost for you?
First 40 minutes. Simple as that, mate. You concede the first 6 goals of the game and you're playing catch up in wet footy. And, I mean, they were playing a dry weather brand in the first, quarter and a half. And that was that, unfortunately. We got flogged around stoppage, flogged around clearances. And, weight of numbers your defense can only hold up so much, unfortunately. So, look, a disappointing night. It really seemed like a missed opportunity, to be honest, because I think the players that we threw out on the field, regardless of injuries, I think were good enough to get the job done. But I just thought we were outdone. We're outsmarted by a smarter football team who played the conditions much better.
Yeah, look, I completely agree with you. And I mean, big question is just why do you think it took us so long to adjust to the wet? It was clear it was raining all day. It wasn't like it came out of nowhere. We knew the forecast. Did no one look at the weather app before the game? And then clearly the one thing you want to do in the wet is just get the ball on your foot and get that territory. And we were just fumbling around with handballs. What do you think was the reason we just couldn't do it? Is it a coaching thing, players, or a bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. And you've also you can't underestimate the opposition and putting you under pressure as well. Like their tackle pressure in midfield was insane, Richmond. You saw Prestia and Jack Graham in particular. He always seems to have blinders against us, Jack Graham. He had 10 tackles, which was double our next best of 5. Jeez. I think Boyd and Cripps had 5 each. And Prestia and Graham both had 14 combined, which I think it was about 5 or 6 tackles more than our whole midfield combined. I mean, Matt Kennedy had no tackles. In that weather, it's not good enough. And considering it was Cripper's 150th as well, like, I mean, you'd have thought that they'd bring the heat, which they really didn't. And Richmond clearly went to work on our stoppage game from round 1. And mate, they better set our own game, really. When you look back at it, Dion Prestia, 13 clearances, mate. He, for lack of a better phrase, mate, he murdered us at stoppage and clearance. So, and our midfielders, like, just, Cripper had 25 handballs, or I think it was 25 handballs. I mean, it's bewildering. It's bewildering. I think, you know what I think it is too? You were saying that why did they take so long to transition into that weather football? I think when it's been ingrained in you for the last 6 to 8 months that we're going to play this way, when you get out there and the opposition puts you under pressure, you revert to back what you've been taught, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's hard to train it out.
Look, at least we're going back to what we're learning this year, and it's not as if going back and reverting to type is the footy we were playing last year. So at least there's some positive step. But I agree with you. I mean, just the overuse of the football. And like I had my note written down straight here being like, Richmond, they play that pressure football. They kill you on the turnover, play straight into their hands when you're fumbling around with it. And at quarter time, the kick to handball ratio, we were going at 1.3. Richmond were going at 2.3. And
It's
then,
ridiculous.
we end up by the end of the game staying at 1.3. They'd bring it back to, I think, 1.8, but it ended up clearing up a little bit throughout the game. It was probably the wettest it was in that first quarter. And it's just going to absolutely kill you. And you mentioned, I guess, that sort of midfield as well. Just, it had been a bit of an issue over the past two games, and you're hoping it's not a trend. You're hoping maybe, okay, we didn't have Kennedy one week. Chera goes down. Is that an issue? You finally got probably a week to properly plan for it, and it doesn't go our way. What are you seeing? Anything that is becoming an issue in that midfield, or is it just teams getting more time seeing what we're doing in there?
Yeah, look, I think the worrying thing for me is I don't think the conning has been a major problem in that, because him and Nankervis were actually quite even in that battle. It was a very similar amount of hit outs. I'm not exactly sure of the specifics with regards to hit outs to advantage. I would assume Nank potentially got the better of him now. I don't know. Correct me on that if I'm wrong. But for me, I just think they've just got to be harder for longer. Like, I don't feel that they didn't want it. They do want it, but I don't think they were smart enough on Thursday night. And then it gets Essendon, and they just got mauled. They just got mauled on the spread outside of stoppage. But it was funny how that Essendon game was the inverse of what I thought would happen. Is that Essendon hurt us on the inside, but we slaughtered them on transition and got them on the outside, which was, that wasn't going to happen against Richmond. They're a much, much better team, and they're in much better form as well. But I think you mentioned that, we've had Cripps and Kennedy and Chera and all those blokes, but we've had them go down before, and we didn't have too much of an issue with regards to stoppage work and all that. Whether it's teams figuring out what we've been doing over the last sort of maybe half a season, which is eventually going to happen, but that's just got to be down to the midfield coaches and our coaches just being smarter and setting up around stoppage. So I think Hewitt's been a bit down. Kennedy was down. Cripps was just, as I said, 25 handballs. Like, he just got to be smarter than that.
It wasn't smart, and so many times as well. Look, Richmond was so lucky with their kick off the ground. I don't know how many times they just hacked it and it went 30 meters straight to someone in space. Like, they were just completely lucky with that. But it seemed like that was something we never really even tried when the ball was on the ground. So we weren't ready for clearly the conditions for whatever reason. And then as soon as we're under pressure, kept going for the sloppy handballs, and it's not going to work. You have to be so clean, and just wasn't like that. And then the clearances, as you said, it's been our bread and butter. It's been our key way. We've been doing everything. Lost center clearances 9-13, which we end up kind of doing pretty well in that last quarter to sort of get those back. But then lost the stoppage clearances 18-28. Like, we just got mauled everywhere. And as you said,
the slaughter job. It's really a slaughter job. I don't think we won one stoppage at either flank, like halfback flank, or it was an onslaught. Like, look, for me, like, I look at that, and I know sort of inside the club internally, and they're all about, and this is what I'm all about as well. Like, we were speaking, and it's been a hot topic that our defense is depleted, our back six and our back seven are depleted, but they've been the ones who have been standing up. It's all about, you've got to control the source, which is the contest. If you control that facet of the game, it fuels everything else. And Vossi spoke about how we fueled their game. And we did, because they were able to hack clearances out, gain territory, keep the ball alive. The ball is going to stay alive in wet conditions, because you're not really going to be able to mark in those conditions. And that's what Richmond want. And they just swarm you and choke you down. I actually thought we did pretty well to hold up as a defensive unit, like with the onslaught and avalanche that came our way. But weight of numbers is just going to eventually win out. And I think they set a club record for inside 50s, Richmond. It's ridiculous.
76 inside 50s. And that's just insane, because we conceded 40 to them in round one. And I tried to look back and see how close that was to anything we've conceded this year. And the most before that was our Gold Coast game, where we conceded 64. So they got another 12 on top of that. That is just ludicrous. And we knew going in, we don't have the backline cattle that we'd like down there. So we need to win it at the source. We didn't do that, but I agree with you. I think the backline, that's it. Durden comes in, and he maybe didn't look up to pace every single time, but I can't expect him to. He hasn't really spent enough time with our system and enough time training at an AFL level for a while, and thought he did okay. I hope that the whole backline did well to quell what was going on. We have the 51 inside 50, so it got killed compared to 76. And to only lose by 15 points with the ball coming in that hot, backline have to put their hands up and say that that's a good job by them, because that was probably why I think going into that game and afterwards, I was so angry with it. It's probably the most frustrated I've been watching a game of footy. Was I thought, okay, if we lose this game because our backline can't hold up, I can cop it. I get it. We've got a lot of injuries. But when it was the midfield that were really that key reason to why we lost the game, it just hurts you even more.
Yeah, as I said, don't lose where you know you shouldn't, which is that was the most, and I think that was the most frustrating part of the night for me. And like just those short little dinky kicks. That the only bloke who was really trying to go direct was Walshy out of the midfield. You know, he sort of straight line run out of stoppage and try to gain territory. And you know, I thought our wingers were phenomenal as well on the night. Like Nunes, Cottrell, and O'Brien all held their width, and you know, McIntosh and Pickett didn't really do much along those wings. I thought this has been a real drop off in the last 2 to 3. Mate, our half forwards and small forwards, my God. Oh, mate, my God. They've been deployed.
You don't have the run sheet in front of you, but you've basically just keep ticking off everything, beautifully segueing in. Because my next thing was literally what is going on with these half forwards, because they have been, when we didn't have, Harry for that time and they needed to stand up, unbelievable. The pressure they were bringing, ball hits the ground. And it's another easy thing in the wet. It's bring the ball in. We're probably not going to get too many contested marks. Smalls have to go to work. And the midfield definitely didn't help with the sort of the pressure in their entries. I don't think we went long and deep enough because we were just overusing it in that sort of final third. But then when it was in there was no pressure. Only had 4 tackles inside 50 with no individual player having more than one. The only sort of 2 small forwards always had 1 tackle. Martin had 1. Durden had none. Richmond had 9 inside 50 tackles to have a bit of comparison there. So what's going on with the Smalls?
That is a big factor for us as well. And it was an area that Pommy and I did a thing postseason last year that tackles inside 50 was an area we really needed to go to work on, because it was, that fuels your game as well. And it fuels your ability to be able to lock the ball inside your forward half and then just keep piling the pressure on opposition. And I just it's funny, Durden's drop off has been in line with the club's sort of trough at the moment, because we are going through a trough when you think about it. Like the Collingwood loss, I didn't think we played particularly well against Essendon, albeit it was a win. And now this Richmond loss as well. But I will say we are, and it's a phrase I like to use a lot, we are mitigating the damage as best as we can, which is good, because, even when you're in these little form dips, they were still able to pinch that win against Essendon last week when they didn't play as well. And, I think in general play, we were belted against Richmond, really. But there's something about this group. They've just kept themselves in every single game that they're in, probably bar the Freo and Gold Coast game. But even then, it was nothing absolutely disgraceful. But it's not been the whole, it's funny, it's not been the whole team that's broken down in one round. It's a facet. So one week it might be the forward line that just completely breaks down like it did against Fremantle. The next week, it might be the back line who are not bold or brave enough with their ball use, which is what happened against Freo. And they were able to come forward and lock it in their forward half. And Richmond were just, they were just phenomenal around the contest. And they took away our own game from us. And that's our one wood. I think getting back to a dry deck this week will help our Smalls. But mate, they've got to lift. And Jack Martin, my golly,
oh my goodness!
I don't want to single him out, but his intensity is usually not something I question. But mate, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere but the MCG that night, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's such an interesting guy, because when he's at his best, he's unbelievable. And I get it. And Vossi even comes out and talks about how hard that sort of half forward position can be, because you float in and out of games. But I mentioned on the podcast last week, all I want from Jack Martin is when the ball's there, the intensity to hit it. Because his first season that he came in the second season, his tackle pressure in the sort of 2020 season, unbelievable. The ball was there. You saw Jack Martin on the edge of the pack. Immediately you're going, he wants it and he's going to win it. And I thought kind of last week there were glimpses of him getting that back into his game. And I even singled him out on the pod saying, I showed a bit more intensity. He's got a lot to build, but I'm happy that that's at least back. But then, the effort that was thrown in this week, now he's got the injury again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him if a guy like Honey, which we'll get to and talking about their changes, if he comes in and starts to put his best foot forward.
Yeah, I think for Jack Martin, I don't think there is any more of a. I think he's hit his ceiling, really. I don't think we're going to get much more out of him with regards to output and goals and disposals and what he provides that forward line too. So he's not consistent enough, unfortunately, and he's not reliable enough, which is unfortunate because I actually think he's a super talented player, but that only gets you so far. So and he's been part of that half forward breakdown that have been, really poor in the last fortnight, even against Essendon. I know we won, but I thought we were particularly poor across the half forward flank. And as I said, that area of the game, the contest is one thing, but if you're not tackling and locking the ball inside your front half, because I actually think our best performances have been when our smalls are on fire. You look at the Sydney game; they went bonkers.
100%.
And we won. That was probably our best performance this year. And then you look back to the GWS game when it was only Charlie, and they all bobbed up there as well. But the last it's funny how Harry's come back into the team and the smalls and half forwards have dropped off. Is it? I don't know if it's in their head. Are they lairising and just looking at Harry and waiting for him to come? And they're like, oh, he's going to mark it, or because it seems like the front and center just doesn't exist anymore.
Their positioning has been atrocious for the past at least 3 weeks. It has not been good. Anytime the ball goes in, you're just going, where's the smalls? I know like Collingwood's, they've got really good mid-sized small defenders that mop it up and transition well. They absolutely killed us. And then this week, we know how good Richmond are with their transitions. And even, just the goals from the smalls this week, 1 to Durden, 1 to Martin. And that was it. And they really didn't threaten at many stages throughout. So not even was the defense there, but us going forward didn't seem to be there. And I guess, what are your thoughts on, they had the one spare back there for most of the night, whether it was Vlosten or Broad for most of the time, going to kill us quite a lot. Would you have wanted to change that and try to even out the contest, or what are your sort of thoughts on how that played out?
Well, I reckon, look, I know there's a spare up the line, and I did, that was probably one of the biggest things that I was looking at in the game, because we're up on our away games, we're up on level 4. So you can picture it perfectly, and you could see that pretty much for the entire night they had a spare down back, which is understandable. But I still think, and I saw there were a couple of times when we were surging off half back where I think we sort of looked at the spare and we're like, but that is like, you got to think about it too, right? If it's wet and it's windy and it's raining and conditions are slippery, how often is that spare going to come in and take the mark? It's almost, is it a 50-50 split? Maybe it's a bit less. I mean, the percentages of you marking an aerial ball in that type of weather is just, in all probability, you play the percentages, the bloke's probably going to drop it or fumble it, and it allows you that half second for your forward to come in and bring it back to ground. So exactly. I that you said it, and everyone was saying it's a kick forward at all cost mentality, regardless of if he's going to chop it off. So I thought we played that pretty poorly. I thought we respected their spare defender way too much. And there has to be a tipping point where you're like, well, all right, well, we've got to go. We've got to try and gain territory. We've got to trust our guys up the field to, even if it might be a 2-on-3 against us, we've got to trust that Charlie and Harry or TDK can get there and bring it to ground and affect the contest, because you know how good they are aerially.
Yeah, and I get why he didn't maybe want to chuck one down back, chuck one in our forward line and even it out, because we know how undermanned our defense is. So we're going, okay, well, that kind of maybe works out well for us. We can chuck a spare down back and hope that mitigates it. But something definitely needs to change there, because it's almost been a theme of Carlton over the past many years now that whenever someone chucks a spare man down back into our forward line, we'd never seem to be able to play it well enough. And it is pretty frustrating. Did you have any other, I guess, key takeaways about maybe what went wrong before we try to touch on at least a couple of positives? Yeah,
just look, I actually think our pressure, as in like that manic nature and that rabid nature you see from us, that you probably saw from us against Sydney, that seems to have completely waned away. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a little tweak in tactics because our defense is a little bit depleted, or I'm not 100% sure as to what it is. But I would vouch to say, just from the eye test, I haven't seen that hunting, real dogged performance that we saw. Because that Sydney performance, I think, from a pressure perspective in the first half, I think that was the benchmark for us, really.
Yeah.
And we've failed to live up to it since. Since that game, we've completely dropped off, which is really frustrating. But look, I mean, it's fixable, which is good. It's not as though it's a complete and utter disaster where the tactics don't work and the game plan doesn't work and whatnot. So it's fixable.
Yeah.
It's fixable.
Yeah. I guess with the lack of pressure and maybe the midfield dropping off as well, do you think there's maybe an issue as well with we don't tend to put a lot of players through the middle compared to other teams that they'll throw a bunch of people in for 2 or 3 center bounces and change things up. We tend to go with the same crop every single week, and you've sort of lost a midfielder with Chera. Didn't necessarily replace it. It was pretty much Walsh has a few more. We throw Fisher in for a little bit. Do you think that maybe tiring's not the best word because they should be fit enough to keep going, but throughout games, it just becomes that little bit harder not being able to stay fresh?
Yeah, potentially. But I think you've also got to back in what has worked in the past as well. But then there also comes a point in time where, well, if it's not working, do you shirk and do you say, okay, well, maybe we've got to bring in maybe an extra midfield rotation, but we take away from this part of the ground? Or I think the obvious thing to do would be to take out a winger and bring in a midfielder, but then you potentially lose the width out wide, because I actually think our wingers have been a big part of the way we've been, winning games. I think when our wingers get on top is when we're riding games. But I think for me, and I've been I've not a knocker, but I've been more in the case of there's a reason Paddy Dow's not in the team. And potentially his burst and surge in those conditions on that night could have been well used. But do you really back him in the cut and thrust against a team like Richmond with their midfielders under the pump? Probably not. But I know for a fact that, you look at our rotations around the ground at stoppages, and he sort of uses, it's a sort of like an 8 to 7 man rotation where, half forwards will go through the stoppage midfielders, but the centre bounce is always the same stoppage. So do they change up something in there? No, I don't think they do. I think the mids as a collective have just got to be smarter and harder. Simple.
Yeah.
They're good enough to do it. We've seen it. They're good enough to all do it.
Yeah, I probably agree with you on the Dow stuff too. Like I've said on the pod last few weeks, I know a lot of people have been calling, bring him in. He's been playing decently in the twos, but then I sort of watch him in. Oh, that's the thing. I'll go, okay, I'll watch a couple of games in the twos, and he's racking up the possessions. And then second half, he doesn't seem to touch the ball. And even when he gets it, I don't think they're that impactful, if that's maybe the right way to describe it. And I guess, there's a lot of people have been talking and saying with a Dow, you can only really play at the stoppage. You can only really play there. You can't really go anywhere else. And in our midfield, we've got guys that can float forward. We've got guys that can go out on the outside. It makes it hard because then who centre bouncer are you taking away? And like you mentioned, you've got to get the best guys in there. And pretty much everyone else that we currently have is above Paddy Dow. And the way this club's been going at the moment, I back in the decision makers to know why players aren't playing for once.
Well,
and
they've got it right 9 out of what are we, 9 and 4? What's that? 9 out of 13 times, is that right? So and they've probably got it right in a couple of the losses too. But I think like you look at Dow's numbers, his kicking efficiency is the lowest of all those players that he's going up against in the midfield. I think it's last time Pommy and I checked, it was around about 46 to 47% kicking efficiency, which is the lowest of him, Chera, Cripps, Walsh, Kennedy, and Hewitt. So of that 6-man rotation, Dow's kicking efficiency is the lowest. And I would vouch to say that out of all those players, he's the one least likely to want to take contact in a tackle and then dish out a handball. He's trying to get out the front of the stoppage, which is not Boss's way. And you see that we try to fish the handball out and then find the runner. So I think the way you take opposition midfielders out of the stoppage is to have possession of the ball, let them hit you, as they're moving towards you create space out the back, and they're able to lift their arms and get the head. And you see Kennedy and Cripps do that a lot, and Hewitt too. Like you see Hewitt, he's able to take the hit and then dish off, and Chera can do it as well. So I don't think that's a strength of Dow. I think they're trying to teach that into him at reserves, and you can see it. They're trying to turn him into more of an inside midfielder, but he's just not up to it at the moment. And I understand that. And out of all coaches to trust with picking midfielders, it's probably going to be Michael Voss, to be honest. So I won't doubt his judgment yet.
100%. Look, obviously it wasn't a great performance, but there were a couple little individual highlights at least. What did you make of Jordan Boyd's breakout game?
Mate, phenomenal. Bloody phenomenal. I mean, all you can do, like one of my closest mates, he's a gun country footballer up in Albury, and he doesn't play anymore, but he's saying, mate, all you can do is just beat the bloke next to you. And mate, he did that nearly all night. And how clean is he? He reminds me of, and this was and Pommy and I were also saying as well, and Mars and Rocco and I on the jumper punch, we were sort of going, well, I mean, everyone loves Stocker, and I understand that, but Boyd's ahead of him. You look at the numbers in that sort of back pocket spot, and they're sort of looking for spoils and not so much intercepts, but scoring rebounds and trying to create scoring chains from the back half, and even locking down your opponent and then hurting your opponent the other way. And he's doing that in spades at the moment. He's a tough little bugger as well, mate. He doesn't like getting beaten. And as I said, mate, his kicking is elite.
Well, that was the thing. We lose a Zach Williams, so we're going to need a bit more leg speed in there. Someone that can, kick really, really well. And he had the 16 disposals, 11 kicks going at 75% in the wet. And every time the ball came to him, he was just so incredibly strong, so incredibly clean. In a day and a night where 90% of Carlton players could not play in the conditions, he was unbelievable. 11 intercept possessions, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles. Massive meters gained player as well with 389. Like nothing you could have asked for more from this kid. And it's good that he's been able to now get a bit of a run of games, because that's always the hardest thing when you're coming straight into the team. You play one, you're out, come back in. It's so hard for him. But yeah, we've absolutely found a player here. Wouldn't surprise me. I know you said you love how the wings are playing, and obviously he's doing well down back. Wouldn't surprise me if in the coming years we end up pushing him higher up the ground, because I think he can really be a nice player for us.
He could, if he's able to build up his tank, then absolutely. If he's able to, as you said, like meters gained is a huge thing with wingers. That's one of the factors they look at. Inside 50s as well. Creating scoring chains, which is what Nunes has been. I don't know if you saw that stat a couple of weeks ago, that I think he's the second highest player for scoring chain involvements in the AFL behind Shea Bolton, that's a big feather in his cap. And there's a reason he's getting picked every week. And then the other one is distance travel, kilometers on your GPS. So if he can work his way up there, then by all means, he can work his way up the ground. And, as I said, all you can do is beat the bloke next to you, just back to basics. And, I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was as stiff as anything to get dropped after the Adelaide game. But he's worked his way back in beautifully.
Definitely. What other players did you absolutely love to see, or any other little things that you saw in the game that you can take away some key positives?
Yeah. There's probably 3 or 4, maybe 5. Lewis Young, my God, he's an unsung hero at the moment. He's had a heap of pressure lumped on him the last couple of weeks, and he stepped up like you wouldn't believe. It was probably stiff to cop a couple of goals against Lynch. I mean, he had one out the back, which was just, what do you do there? And then the other one where he gave away that free kick. Was it in the first quarter?
I think it was the first quarter. That was.
What's he supposed to do? And he's gone up to, was it Nathan Williamson?
Like, definitely was.
He's like, mate, what am I supposed to do? Like this, I didn't touch him. What you're saying I didn't do. But anyway, thought he was phenomenal in the night. His spoil count is through the roof. His intercept possessions are through the roof as well. And he's been a stalwart of the back line, in the last sort of month and a half. Well, pretty much the whole year.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
When you think, all you can be is reliable. Reliability can be your best friend. And you look at all the blokes who are going down now, like McGovern's never been fit. Williams has never been fit. McDonald with the back, we don't know what's happening there. And Marchbank, we know, is never fit either. So it's brutally unlucky, but thank God we picked him up, because he's been phenomenal.
Big thanks from the doggies for that one.
I know. Nick Austin, mate. He's done a good job with that regard. The other fellow I thought, and this was a game that proved to me that Harry's lengths ahead of Charlie. Like he kept us in the game, mate. I mean, like, and this is the thing, like the comparison between Harry and Charlie, and like, I think Charlie sucked it up a bit that night. And I don't like when he sucks back, when he found out and kept too close to goal. I prefer him when it's not going. Just get on your bike, mate. Go and find the ball. Like I think that's got to be a directive from the forwards as well, because I think that's when he's playing his best footy. But for Harry, he just keeps presenting, and eventually the breaks are going to fall your way if you keep playing the way he does. And touch wood, his return seamlessly from that meniscus, mate. He looks bloody fantastic. So he was great. And Adam Sard, mate, what do you say about him?
Oh my goodness,
unbelievable. Him and
one of the best players I've ever seen.
Doherty was just, I think, you use the word brave, but I don't think it's used enough in his regard. Some of the stuff Doherty did going back with the flight on Thursday night was just unbelievable. And Sardi again was phenomenal as well. I still don't think we use him enough. I still don't think we look for him enough. We need to look for him a lot more, because when he gets the ball, things happen. You're naturally inclined to move about when he gets the ball, and he's just the spark off halfback that we need. And he's probably in career best form, to be honest. I think he keeps going the way he is. I reckon he could be a lock for that halfback flank role in the All Australian team. Not that I care about that, but that's the type of form he's in.
Oh well, him and Doc pretty much on form should be the locked in All Australian halfbacks. That one of them probably will miss out because the AFL go, we can't have too many of one team down there, which I think is ridiculous. But yeah, I think I say every single week, Sard, I don't understand every single time he gets the ball, how he can find a player where he does, going as fast as he can. He picks out the play you would have never thought he would have kicked it to, around the body, and hits him lace out. It's just ridiculous. And he was playing in his own climate on Thursday night. I spoke about Jordan Boyd playing so well in the wet. It was dry conditions for Sardi out there, still taking his bantlers, still running with it. But yeah, if we can somehow even get, like, he had 25 disposals, 15 kicks at 80%. We can still get more out of him and create more space to let him run through. It's just going to be even better for us.
Yeah, he's an incredible player. And I think the one thing for him is that, like, in those one-on-one situations, and when there's like, clinch of players together, you just somehow he gets a tap forward, or he's just able to be clean and siphon his way through the contest. And players like that, that's what frustrates me the most, is that when you've got players like that, and then you've got a half forward line who are trying to connect with him and just aren't in sync at the moment, you got to be able to utilize the forms of those half backs, especially on transition too. So everyone's got to come to the party to, that form down back needs to be replicated up the ground, which is not at the moment, and it's frustrating.
And that's why Harry's performance was so amazing, because this is why we're always going to be in every single game, because we have a Harry, we have a Charlie. If you can just get the ball down there, 9 times out of 10, they're going to find a way to clunk it, win a free kick, and they're going to get their opportunities. And for him to stand up how he did with, as you mentioned, with Charlie getting sort of battered again, unfortunately, by Taran, he's 4 goals for the game, 3 in that last quarter, almost drags us over the line. And yeah, like, you just need your best players to stand up. And finally, we have those pieces. It all just needs to connect, like you say, and we'll be absolutely unbeatable.
Yeah, I think the conditions as well, I think this week will suit us a little bit better. But again, you've got to feed off those players, mate. Like, it's one thing for them to be all up and about, but if the players around them aren't, and it's not been our bottom 5 or 6 the last couple of weeks. I think Cripper's been a little bit down. I don't think he played smartly on the Thursday night. Kennedy's been a little bit down. Durden's been a little bit down. All those players that we think, oh, geez, they're gun footballers. Hewitt was a little bit down again, only the 24 touches as well, and more handballs than kicks in the weather. And it's the bigger names that need to start in the midfield, that really need to start coming to the party, because their drop off has been in line with our form slump.
Yeah, no, look, that's a great point, because I've been highlighting sort of that period where we started to win a few games and get that form against your Norths, your Adelaides, and running it through there. I was noting every week the bottom 6, the stats, and going into them and saying how the bottom six is absolutely lifted, and that's a key driver in why we're being able to win games. And it's insane now that they're the ones that are still continuing that form. And you mentioned, Jack Nunes before. I am notorious for, giving it to Jack Nunes now and then.
Right.
And I even said after the Essendon game, I think straight after watching it, I was like, gee, didn't rate his game. Watched it back with the mindset of looking at, went through his stats, and I was like, I'm missing something. I need to watch this and actually watch every single thing from Jack Nunes, and could not believe how wrong I was with that opinion. Absolutely unreal. The scoring change and just how he's able to shift around at the contest at the stoppage, and so many little pivotal handballs that if you're not looking for it, you won't see it from a player like him. And those outside few, Cottrell's been really good the past few weeks as well.
Yes.
Those players have definitely been stepping up, and we're needing that. Where's the Cripper form from the first 3 games of the season? We haven't had.
Where are you, son? Mate, where are you? Where's your 3 and 30? Where's your 30 touches and winning the game for us? He's waned away a little bit the last sort of couple of weeks, and it's been a little bit not disappointing. I mean, they're all going to go through dips in form, which is understandable. But you talk about starting from the source. I mean, that's the beginning of it, really. He's the one who's going to set the barometer and all that. But I think for me, the one player that, and I haven't mentioned him yet, but I want to mention him and go back as a positive on the game. I know he does have tendency to have moments where you go, but mate, Lockie O'Brien, mate, I sang his praises before the season started. You can go on the Carlton official TikTok website. And you can see I said he's going to be the most improved player at our football club, and he's tracking that way. And look, as a winger, and I don't think this is what people, this is like, I'm trying to educate people as to what the role of a winger is and what the roles of players are. I don't try to say, I'm right or he's wrong but the 3 main factors that you've got to look at from a winger's point of view is, as I said, meters gained. That's one. That's what the coaches all look at. Yeah. They look at inside 50s, which is obviously your link from half back to the forward line. And then they look at kilometres travelled by foot, obviously. So he ticks those boxes every single week. And there's a reason he's played 12 games this year. Or I think he missed 1 game this year. I think he's been – well, him and Nunes are on par together. I think he's been a little bit more influential, has O'Brien. And I trust him ball in hand. And that's the big thing. That's the big thing. Always trust him ball in hand.
His kick late, I think it might have been in that last quarter, must be one of the greatest kicks in our forward 50 that I've ever seen. As soon as it came up his foot, I was like, he stuffed this one up, and then somehow just millimeter perfect over the defender straight to, I think it was Harry, and just unbelievable. Like he's such a good player, and I feel like he's someone that you really need to go to the game and actually try to watch him and where his positioning is. His ability to continually track back and forward is something that you don't pay too much attention to. And the wings are such a misunderstood facet of the game. How teams are trying to play and control the width and go and burst from the stoppages. And his defensive work has been great in his positioning. And sometimes people go, he maybe shirked that contest a little bit, didn't go as hard as maybe he should. And it's like,
who doesn't?
And that's not necessarily his role in the team. We need to stop thinking that every single player has to be this and have to have every little facet. He's got some of the best features and attributes that players don't have in our club, let alone the AFL as well.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I absolutely love what Lob's been doing.
Now this is the thing, and we recorded the JP for Tuesday for tomorrow night yesterday evening, and I had a big rant and rave about this. Don't worry about that. And you mentioned something there, understanding what the role is, and it's misunderstood. As a winger, if we're worried about Lockie O'Brien laying 7 tackles a game and getting contested touches, well, you don't understand what the wing role is, clearly. And if he's having to get contested touches, well, something's buggered up. Something is stuffed up in stoppage, or something is stuffed up in the structure, because he should be the bloke on the outside waiting to get the ball. So you need your balance of contested balls, and you need your balance of blokes who can hurt you on the outside. And he's a bloke who can really hurt you on the outside. And he's come of age. All you can do as a football, you've just got to continually improve. And we spoke to Mark McClure a couple of weeks ago, and he said, he goes, our mantra, and this is why we won flags, we just continually improved. You know, whether it's just working on your fitness, whether it's working on extra kicking in training, whether it's working on your positioning, you know, and we talk about what's called the contest vacuum. And it's hard as a winger to discipline your mind at a state where it's, okay, I know the ball's over there, but I know I have to stay out. But it's like, it's the oriental reflex, they call it, where your vision and your eyes are just captured by what you're looking at, and you're naturally drawn to that. It's the hardest thing to stay out. And that's where Sidebottom hurt us against Collingwood, because his positional discipline was phenomenal. And that's something that Lockie is still working on. He's still very young. You know, that's no excuse, 100%. But his projection is going upwards. And I know Vossi's been a big rap for him this year. So, I mean, what more can he do? And he probably had tackle of the year this year for our club when he belted Ed Richards. So there you 100%. Go. There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's not something you want to always use as an excuse as well, but I guess going back to us talking about maybe those small forwards dropping off a bit as well, like you look at how many games they've played and how young they are as well. Like sometimes that is going to happen. They're going to go through these lulls where they're not these 100-game players in the prime of their career. We've still got this youth that is running through, and it's going to be exciting because we've seen so many positive signs from these players that I guess even like you can throw in a Lockie Plowman as someone who always gets so much abuse. And I've always said I'm apparently the number one ticket holder of the Lockie Plowman fan club because I feel like I defend him every single week. But he's another one that just continues to go in that back line and does it well. And these are the players that are going to be the reason that we're progressing up the ladder because we're getting improvement from everyone across the board. And as you mentioned, those top ones need to start getting back to their form.
I'll tell you what, with Plowman, mate, he's been tougher for longer. That's what he's been, and he's been very reliable down back as well. And he's a safe kick. You know, ball in hand, you can trust him ball in hand. He's not going to, but he can hit that diagonal 45-degree kick that opens up. I've seen him do it. I see him do it on occasion, and it's nice to watch. And, you know, he's starting to build back into that form that we saw back in 2016. And look, you mentioned that people have a go at him and people have a go at these certain players. And I understand it too. Like, I'm the same. We're all the same. You know, you want more out of 100%. Your players too. But conversely, when they're playing well, you've got to praise that too. It's not about, oh, you're a flip-flop. You know, you said this. And then all I can do is base my opinion on what I see and the evidence that, you know, comes forth from their playing ability and the numbers that they pose every week. So, look, no knock on him over the last month and a half.
No, you've absolutely nailed it. So, look, there's one thing I didn't want to touch on it too much, but I know that it's something that we got a lot of fan questions for, and so I'll go straight into it. One from Ante Rebic that says, did we get robbed?
Well, with the Nunes goal?
Yeah, I believe that's what they're referring to, and probably just the umpiring as a whole. Got a lot of people coming in not happy with it and how it was officiated. What are your sort of thoughts?
The umpiring on the night was disgraceful. Like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not, I'm not saying that cost us the game. Was it a factor? Minimal, yeah, probably. Maybe it made up 5% of the result, something like that. The Nunes goal, should it have been overturned? Probably not. Was it absolutely conclusive? I didn't think so, looking back at the replay. But, you know, my concern was 20 seconds later, we allowed them to kick a goal out the back from a kick-in.
That is literally what I wrote down here as what my answer to that question was literally, look, it wasn't good, and I was frustrated with, I guess, a lot of the free kicks and things like that, as you're going to be. Some weeks you don't get the rub, some weeks you do.
Of course.
You've just almost sort of snatching this game, and you get a free kick against you. But what do you have to do? You have to defend, and how you can concede straight away from that kick in. That's what I'm more annoyed with, because that's what you can control. You can't control what the umpire's going to do. You can't control what they're doing in the arc and what special HD footage they've apparently got up there, the greatest cameras in world history. But you can be on the field and you can stop someone from just running through you. And that's just not what we did. And they go through and that just cost you.
Were we robbed? No.
Yeah, basically.
No.
Because and you can see the first 6 goals of the game. The umpiring's not a factor at that stage. You've got to be hard enough for long enough. So before we get into a few more fan questions, we'll go to the fan votes. I calculated all these. You guys gave 1 to Boyd, 2 to Doc, and 3 to Sard. Who would you give your 3-2-1 to, Paul?
3-2-1. I gave 3 to who did I give my 3? I'm just trying to think back to my votes. I think I may have given Doherty best on.
Yep.
I'm probably going to go the defenders. Yeah, 3 to Doherty, 2 to Young, and I'll go 1 to Sardi. I thought the backman deserved all the votes on the weekend.
Yeah, I've gone similar. Gave 1 to Boyd, 2 to Doc, and 3 to Sard. It was the defense that stood up, and they were the ones that everyone was so worried about going into the game, and they were absolutely unreal.
Isn't it funny how that always works? You think one thing's going to happen, and you think, oh, we're stuffed here, and then the other thing happens. The contest is good, we're great there, and then we get belted there, and the area of the ground that's been depleted stands out. It's
bizarre. It's bizarre.
It's pretty weird.
And that's kind of like the crazy thing as well with this, because I said before the Richmond game that, look, there's a big chance we win this game, big chance we lose this game. And I know people were getting very worried, looking at the fixture, looking at finals and going, if we lose this, it's season over. And I was trying to say, okay, let's calm down. There are so many games to go. And you just look at what happened on the weekend. Any fixture can go anyway. You've got St Kilda losing to Essendon. You've got, Port beating Sydney. Let's just take it. It's an annoying trope, but 1 week at a time, because we could easily come out and lose to Adelaide and West Coast, but then beat Melbourne, beat Brisbane. Doesn't matter. Let's just figure out every single week, fix little things that we need to be doing, because you win enough games, you'll make finals. Don't worry about everything else.
Of course. It's a thing. And I always commit, and I did this years ago as well. When I was you commit the cardinal sin of looking 8 weeks ahead, and you don't know what's going to happen. So just let's let that rest for now, and worry about Saturday afternoon.
100%. So, got a couple of fan questions. We've got one from David Madden, who says, if you could have one person from our injury list back next week, who would it be?
Mark Pitternet.
Yeah. I think it was like before Durden goes down. So, yeah, I probably would have said Pitt. It's getting a little bit worrying now with not having really any key defenders, which may be turning me towards Wiedering. But now that, again, we've mentioned this whole pod, how well the defense seems to keep going, we need to win it at the source. Yeah, I'll back you in with Pitt there. We just need our best man back.
That's my frame of mind. It's like, okay, how are we going to win the ball at the source, so the back line, because that's where it all starts.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
And he's going to be the provider of that. What is he? Number one ruckman, hit outs to advantage in the comp. Love to have him
unbelievable back. Turnaround from Pitt.
Mainly he'll be back a little bit sooner than expected.
Let's hope so. Let's hope him and
there's your scoop for the show.
That's good. Thank you. Exclusive right here. Well, we'll clip this one out, put it on the socials straight away for that one. Thank you. And we've also got one from Mickey C, who, speaking of rucks, says, on a positive side, was that TDK's best rucking game yet? And I was a bit surprised by that question, because I didn't necessarily see that. I think if you look at the hit outs, it probably was a little bit better for us, but I'm still probably wanting a bit more from TDK in the ruck. What's your sort of assessment on the ruck situation at the moment?
I don't think it was his best game. I think his best game was against Sydney when he took all those marks. I think it's funny, as the game goes on, his marking seems to get better, which is funny.
Yeah.
His hit out work, he evened up against Nank, but is Nank really that type of ruckman who's going to leap over him and get the tap in? Maybe physically he got the better of him potentially. But look, I mean, I thought I thought it was going to be an area that we were going to be flogged in.
Yeah.
Because at the start of the season, he wasn't really. I mean, Voss said that we believe he's going to be the number one ruck in time, but he wasn't really being played in that role. But he stepped up when he needed to.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, he's going to have a tough test again this weekend. But on the Richmond game, I thought he was okay. Pass mark for me. Pass mark.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm not expecting a ridiculous amount from him without, Pitt there to help shoulder the load. And it's a tough role that he's in, but hopefully he's going to be better for it, for playing as pretty much the number one ruckman for this sort of month and a bit. But it's so hard with that midfield. I think the hitouts were a bit more even this week. But again, I felt that Nank's hitouts were just so good and so perfect to the Richmond players, whereas when we're winning them, they're not amazing. It's not straight down the throat all the time. And it's just that hard thing not having your number one ruckman there and just having him and JSOS keep rucking in there.
Yeah, I think you'll see TDK at his best when Pitternet comes back in and they're able to split the load. I think a lot of teams do that now. You see Richmond do it with Bolter and Nank. You see Essendon do it with Phillips and Draper. And you saw, Melbourne did it with Gawn and Jackson, but we know Gawn's down. But I think the best teams are able to alternate that position really well.
Yeah, look, and probably the last question, I can't remember where I saw this one, but I thought it was a good thing to bring to it. People have been mentioning with the lack of defensive power that we now have down there, Sauce basically rucking for most of the game and throwing TDK down back. Is that something you'd look to do, or are you happy with who we've got down there?
No, that just needs to be left alone. I don't like that tinkering. Like TDK dropping back in the hole as a ruckman, which we see a lot of rucks do in the competition. Yeah. Gawn does it a lot, where they late in the quarter they drop back into the hole and play that defensive job. Yes, great. Not as a centre half back. I don't think he's got the. I don't think he has the mobility or the ground coverage to be able to play that role. And Jack Silvani down back, I don't want to be. I love him as an outlet up front.
Yeah.
He's leading patterns. He just hits up at the ball all day. And, I think he plays that half-forward role exceptionally well. He's able to suck his defender out and leave the leading lanes up behind for Harry and Charlie to work into. So I wouldn't be touching that too much.
Yeah, I agree. I think I said the other week, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul when we just keep doing this. We're throwing Cripper in the ruck to then be the second one again. You saw how much that took away from what we were doing in that midfield. You've just got to do the next man up mentality, because we've seen our strengths elsewhere around the ground. You can't keep taking from that place and making that worse just to make the defense maybe 5% better. It's just not going to work for us. You just got to back in the system, back in the players that we have.
Yeah, exactly. It's horses for courses too. If they believe it's going to work against certain opposition, then great. Like, I'm all for that. I'm all for them tinkering and changing around with it. But I think if what works, just leave it for now. And it's not dire straits. It's not like we're losing because this is completely stuffed or anything. It's just minor tweaks that we need to make at the contest and at the source that it just fuels the rest of your game, if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah, no, it does. And look, I guess now going into the Fremantle game, we can forget about the Richmond game. Hopefully I'll never have to think about that one ever in my consciousness. And I guess the big thing is just defense. I reckon I recorded the podcast last week, and it was, man, how good was Caleb Marchbank? So good to see him back. I reckon I stopped recording maybe 5-10 minutes later. Marchbank's gone. And it's just, it's so hard for him. It's so hard for everything. And then you finally get the last real defender that you have in. You bring in your Durden, and thought he was fine. I was really happy with his performance, keen to see how it was going to grow. And then last few minutes of the game, he does his knee. And now we're pretty much down to Brody Kemp, and that's pretty much it. Is it as simple for you that he's the one that comes in, or are you trying to fix some other things?
No. I think he comes straight in, to be honest. I liked his game in the reserves on Friday night. I thought he was quite strong and resolute defensively as well. Look, there are a few moments where, I think there were like 2 or 3 times where he just sort of got out. He got sort of outdone in one-on-one contests, which it's going to happen. It's wet weather. You slip half an inch, and your opponent's got you. But he had some big moments where you thought that his opposition forward was going to get him, but then he'd just get a fist in, or he'd get a foot in, or he'd get a hand in and stop the ball from getting out the back. So he did cop a little bit of a knock, but played through it. Seemed to be okay. And I thought when he came in against the Giants, I thought there were a little few iffy moments early, but he worked into the game nicely. No reason why he can't come in and do a job. I think he comes in, and I think that's it. I don't think you overthink it too much, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I thought he built in really well to that game in the VFL. He sort of maybe struggled a little bit early, but it's so hard when you're coming up against a guy like Josh Bruce. I mean, you're losing kilograms, you're losing centimeters. It's going to be a tough call regardless. And some of his efforts late in that game in particular, I remember there was that one contest where he absolutely just flew and then just kept getting those second, sort of third efforts in it. Absolutely unreal. And that's all you can ask from him. That's all we can ask from Durden. That's all we could have asked from Marchbank. When you come in, when the ball's there, give everything and at least
Yeah.
even the contest. And yeah, I even mentioned to Pommy last week when we were having a bit of a discussion about, is it Kemp or Durden to come in? I sort of was going, yeah, maybe I'm not too concerned thinking back, because Kemp was all right when he played on Hogan last year.
Yeah.
He came in, didn't expect him to play that well. He was okay. I get a bit nervous thinking about this week if he's playing on Rory Lobb because of the height, or whether it's Taberner. Worries me a little bit, but he's the next in, and you just got to back in that everyone else around him can play their part. We've seen Doherty go back with the flight. We've seen how good Jordan Boyd stepped up. I think you just got to back in everyone and hope that they can lift up enough that it covers, the absence of the players that we now have down there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got shortfalls down defensively like that, well, Brodie Kemp should be saying, well, don't let the fucking ball come in 76 times.
Don't.
No, well, as simple as that, isn't it? I mean, as a midfield, you've got, the blokes in the back line are only as good as the blokes in front of them as well. They've, if not been better than the blokes in front of them over the last few weeks. They've had to step up their load because of the, the inept nature with which we're, playing around stoppages, which is frustrating. But, as I said, Kemp's, I think, 193 centimeters. I think Stephen May also 193.
Yeah.
So, you've just got to be smart with how you position your body, and just if you're coming up against Rory Lobb, don't try to outbody him or outmuscle him, and get someone in front so he doesn't have a free jump and run at the ball, and stop the hot supply from coming into him. It's as simple as that.
And Marchbank, I'm pretty sure, is 193 as well. So it's a guy that we're very happy with coming in with his height. And then you almost think Brodie Kemp's a little bit smaller because of the way he's been able to play and move. But you got to make do with what you've got. And what other changes, I guess, would you be looking to make? Because if Jack Martin's fit, are you keeping him? If he's not, are you getting rid of him?
No, he's got to be dropped. After that performance, he has to be dropped. Josh Honey has to come in, and Pommy and I love, players at the stoppage who are able to run in a straight line and cause havoc. And we saw him do that for his fourth goal against Footscray on the weekend, and a phenomenal finish as well. I was a little bit worried. I go, this knee injury might have just curtailed his season for this year. And, against Essendon in the VFL last week, he was sort of going the knuckle on blokes, and his head wasn't in the game. But he turned it on. And he's at his best when he's ripping out the back and hurting opposition out the back with his foot speed, and his finishing ability is it's second to none. We saw glimpses of it towards the back half of last year, that St Kilda game where he come in and had a ripper when Harry tore apart 6 or whatever it was. But he was great in that game, and I reckon he comes straight in. I think he brings everything we need in that half forward line that we've been lacking for the last sort of fortnight or so. And as for another change, look, I know Durden will obviously come out for Kemp, I would think. Yeah. And then the other change I would make, I would not be too perturbed if they were to bring in either Will Hayes or Setterfield for Corey Durden. Now, hear me out with this. I'd go and pluck Fisher out of the midfield, put him back in that forward line, and then I would say to Setterfield and Hayes, you go play the role that Fisher was playing on the ball this week. And I want to see Will Hayes get a gig, but I think it's him and Setterfield. They'll be fighting out for that final spot if they do go that way. I thought Setterfield was phenomenal against the Western Bulldogs. His defensive work was brilliant on the weekend. Or it could be Will Hayes, he's a running machine, and he's been phenomenal in the VFL as well. So max, I would say 3 changes. Yeah, max.
No, I agree with you. I pretty much had the exact same thing here because, Honey, I absolutely love the man. Long-time listeners of the pod will know how much I love Josh Honey. And he's one of those guys as well that it's been tough, I think, for him with our VFL forward line over the past few years because there hasn't been a good crop of players around him that really bring the best out of him. And you've seen when he jumps to that AFL level, just how reliable he is. He kicks his 1 to 2 every single week, which for a guy of his experience is almost ridiculous when you think about it. And at this stage, Martin's out. He needs to get some durability firstly, and then just reinvent himself and do something in the twos. He needs some form to warrant it because other guys are stepping up now. And I'm very excited to see what Josh Honey can do because he had 13 disposals, 4 goals against the Dogs. Yeah. He needed to step up after a couple of sort of lean performances like you mentioned, and he did. And then the other ones, do we bring in that extra mid because Chera probably won't make up for the game. And yeah, Setterfield having 35 and a goal was really good the week before as well. So he's put in a few good performances. I reckon that's why, as you mentioned, he might just get the nod over Hayes, because, I mean, Hayes has 29 and a goal, but I thought the week before he maybe dropped off a little bit from where he was at before he missed a couple of weeks. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if either of those get a gig. The Corey Durden out is interesting, but at least you're bringing in Honey, who I think will offer a lot more pressure than you've got out of Martin. And, yeah, I think you probably just need that one extra versatile player in the midfield.
I think so, and Honey can play stoppages up forward 50, as well. And we saw on the weekend, as I said, that goal that he kicked, his fourth goal was from a stoppage, which is, that's he brings spark, which is what we've been lacking in that half forward area for the last couple of weeks. So I'd love to see him play. Absolutely, I think he will play. I think he will play based off what he's done. He's given himself a nice block of a month to get back into form, get his body right. And now he can hit the ground running into the AFL team with some momentum.
Yeah, and it's no knock on Durden to go back after a couple of weeks to drop off. Go back, get that form back up, and then you'll be straight back in, because we know exactly what he can bring. But we're now ruthless for once, where we've got players knocking on the door. And if you're not at 100% after a couple of games, like you saw with a Jack Carroll, who came in, did some good things, dropped off a bit, next one comes in and you get back your form. So it is an exciting time where, at least probably apart from the defense, we do have some players that are starting to get their confidence back in the VFL.
Yeah, exactly right. And the VFL program has been much better. You can see at the start of the year that they're playing the AFL plan, and it's also, and we've seen now with Hayes coming in, it's a pathway into the AFL team too. So there's a real connectedness between both levels, which has seen the team amp up into the top 8, which we haven't seen our VFL team play finals for a while, which has been disappointing. But I think we're going to be able to see that this year. And I like, Daniel O'Keefe's given a lot of onus to the players, and they've all taken a lot of responsibility. They were disappointing against Essendon a fortnight ago, but they bounced back really strongly. And the one thing I will say is it was as wet as anything on that Friday night, and they learnt from the AFL boys the night before. Very kick-centric game. Gain territory as much as you can, and that was good to see. I know it's something so simple and so silly, but when you go back and look at it, you think, well, mate, they played the percentage and they've won.
Yeah,
they played the conditions right and they won.
It's simple, but that's probably why we lost that game against Richmond. Correct. It was just the simple things of gaining territory and not overusing the football when you didn't have to. Is there any, I guess, key things that you're thinking going into this Freo game, maybe apart from that midfield battle, that can be a key to victory?
I would not stray away from how we've been winning our games. So ball retention, handball heavy, those short, sharp, direct kicks that we use to try to get through opposition press, which is going to be, because I'm a punter and I do all my horse racing analysis and all that, my whole synopsis with everything is you need conditions to suit. Now, when I say conditions, I don't just mean the weather. I mean the opposition you're coming up against, the stadium you're playing at, slick deck, drier conditions as well. We're going to be much better set up, I think, this weekend than we were last week. And you look back at the game against Fremantle earlier in the year, there was a little bit of mail that they did have a very interrupted preparation for that game. So we didn't have Jack Silvani that game. We didn't have Matt Kennedy that game. Harry went down with the knee. Pitternet went down with the knee. So I think we're going to be much better prepared come round this time. And I'll tell you what, mate, Freo did not look too crash hot against Hawthorn. And that Richmond form line's very hot, mate. So I have declared us this week. I think we're unbeatable on Saturday, to be honest.
And I'm interested to see how we react as well. We
will.
Maybe apart from the Essendon game, we've reacted so well to the couple of losses we've had this year. And now that there's been a little bit of drop off in that midfield, they're surely going to be raring to go. And I know Vossi, with his spray the other week, he'll be letting them know where the standards lie. And I think that's the thing I'm most looking forward to. And the little things you're mentioning is, how much have we learnt from the last time we played Freo? Because I was lucky, or maybe unlucky, to be at that game. I was behind the goal, so I had a nice little vision to see how we're setting up and how we were playing. But the lack of ambition from our defenders to do anything, let's just kick to the short kick
Thank
into
you.
the back pocket and then long down the line. And that's just all we did
Mate.
for the whole game. But we've seen at our best, like you said, when we take the game on, when we sprint through the field, when we hold the ball and just wait, just be patient. Just keep switching until you've finally got the play. If we can do that and not be as stifled as we were last time, we're a massive, massive chance. And you see, we didn't play well this week. We almost stole it because we have the players, and I expect a better performance. And why can't we win it?
No, I said last week, regardless of what happens on Thursday, I looked towards this Freo game and I thought, man, this one just sets up a little bit better for us than it does on the weekend. And I've got a funny feeling that it's almost a case of, I think the midfield will lift because you have to lift. Because you look at the opposition that they have and you've got to be at another level. You've got to be smarter. You've got to be hungrier. And there's such simple things, but you're coming up against Sarong, Brayshaw, Fife, Mundy, those type of blokes. You look at it on paper and you go, oh shit, I kind of need to. I need to put in a shift this week.
And they'll be getting probably most of the first looks with Darcy in the ruck as well. It's going to be a hard one for our rucks to curtail. So we're going to have to be switched on because if we do lose the hit out, you've got to be prepared for that.
I'd be. I know it might be an old school mentality, but I'd be targeting Sean Darcy after what he did to Pitt last week. Whether or not he did it on purpose, I don't know. But I know he had eyes straight for Pitt and got the knee right in. I'd be targeting him straight away and getting stuck into him. To be honest,
mate, it's a good way to do it.
What happened last week? I mean, you got to get one back on them, boys. And what better way to do it in front of your home fans? Big crowd, Saturday afternoon, no excuse.
Exactly, and Marvel has been our stadium this season, so I cannot wait to see us play there. I've got beautiful seats directly in the middle on the wing, level 2. So I'm very excited to be sitting in those again instead of copping the level 4 at the MCG for these away games we've been copping. It's not fun.
We've copped a few, haven't we? But no, we've turned out in droves this season. So if that can't motivate them, what can? To be honest, so and they need to get one back for the captain too, for Big Cripper.
Yes,
I thought they disappointed him on Thursday night, which I mean, we saw post game how much the club means to him and how much it all means to him. So get one back for the big fella, and a big shout out. Nick Newman plays his 50th game for the club this weekend, I believe. I think I saw that stat going around,
nice.
and Jack Newns plays his 200th.
Oh, mate, those massive.
Get up for Newsy and Newman, mate. Get up.
Exactly.
Get up
Someone has to. If you didn't do it for Cripper, you've got to back it up this week. You've got 2 of them doing it. That's exciting. Yeah.
You know how we said football's a funny game? They would have loved to have cheered off Cripper and probably would have deserved to have been cheered off last week off a win. What's the bet that they're cheering off Newns and Newman after a win? That's just
it's just the way it goes.
You can just see it, can't you? You can just see it. So look, kudos to them. They've both stepped up this year, and I think Newman's been great for us this year. So
yeah.
Get down to Marvel Stadium. I'll be there, mate. Aisle 37, level 1, mate. Centre wing, mate. Be there having a couple of frothies on Saturday afternoon, celebrating a Blues win. I'm very, very confident this week. Very confident.
No, we absolutely love that positivity here. So it will be that sort of the absolutely perfect way to end this one. Look, Paul, thanks so much for joining me. If you want to get more from this man here, you got to catch him over at the Blue Abroad YouTube channel every Tuesday night on the Jumper Punch. Follow him over on Twitter at PaulSeb05. Is there anything else you want me to plug for you?
Well, JP tomorrow night, we've got a big, we had 2 big guests. We've got one of my very close mates, Michael Maloney, has joined us on the couch. He's going to make a guest appearance, and we interviewed Michael Jamison for our number 40 episode. So Big Jammer is doing great things at the AFLPA. He's got a little bit of work to do this week with the storylines that have kerfuffled and curtailed their way into the news. So he's got his work cut out for him this week, but a fantastic chat with Jammer. So keep an eye out for that tomorrow night.
Very keen to be keep my eye out and watching that one. So yes, go over, see him on Blue Abroad to the Jump Punch, and then also subscribe to the Jumper Punch. You've got your own YouTube now where you can watch all these amazing interviews that you guys have been able to get with former Carlton players. If you want an insight into the legends of this football club, that's the only place you can go and get it. And I've just got to commend you on a terrific job you've been able to do.
Appreciate it, mate. And you and Lockie have been doing a fantastic job as well this year. Keep it up. Keep those consistent podcasts coming out. And the more of us, the better it is. the better the standard of the club on field and off the field. I think we all do a fantastic job. I think Carlton content from a fan perspective is it's number one in the AFL, really. So just keep doing what you're doing. Appreciate you having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and invite me on more often, mate. I'm free when I need to be.
Oh, definitely, mate. We'll definitely be making this a habit, especially once we get Lockie back in. It'll be a beautiful one. So, yeah, thanks again for joining me. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week after a beautiful win against Freo.
Correct.
See you guys next time.
Guru, go Blues.